we're looking at a lot of cuts. We're also going to be joined, I think we already are joined by a recently retired letter carrier who, as you know, the Postal Service has suffered, it's not part of the sequestration, but has suffered some severe setbacks recently. So we're going to try to cover not the whole waterfront, but we're going to try to pick out selected arenas that have huge impact on the public on the one hand, and that are important to the public on the other. So we're going to start off with Amy Hanauer, who's the Executive Director of Policy Matters. She's going to sort of set the general context, and then we will have, she will be followed, and I don't have the agenda here, but I'll do it from memory. David Shagley, who is a worker in the Social Security Administration, and James Merriweather, who is from the VA. We have Bill Denahan here, Bill Lavezzi, Chanel Smith. All of these folks are going to focus on a different aspect of what these cuts are going to look like for those of us who need these services, and also for the entire population. So Amy, why don't you kick, oh, and I forgot, Nina is going to talk about another important aspect, which is military spending and what we could do to increase revenue from that angle. So we'll start off with Amy Hanauer from Policy Matters, Ohio.
Sure. Hi, it's great to see you all here. Thanks so much for being here. I'm with Policy Matters Ohio. We're a nonprofit, nonpartisan policy research institute, and we've done research on the effect of sequestration on Ohio, as well as on the Ohio state budget. And you can find all of that on our website at policymattersohio.org. It's very nice to be here. You know, policymakers and others who really have a goal of shrinking government have landed upon deficit reduction as a way to accomplish that goal. And it's really problematic, because slashing government spending not only deprives us of services that we need, but it lays off workers and sucks money out of the economy, and it actually sends our economy spinning downward. So the irony is that when you send the economy spinning downward, you end up making the deficit larger in the long run, exactly the opposite of the purported goal of these people. So in the last 2 years, Congress has passed laws that will reduce the deficit by $2.3 trillion over 10 years. But three quarters of that came from spending cuts. And I'm talking about essentials like education, like medical and scientific research, roads, bridges, ports, veterans programs, environmental protection, public safety, and other critical services that the public sector is supposed to provide, and the public sector has historically provided, that made our country strong in the first place. So by 2017, non-defense discretionary spending will be at its lowest level relative to the economy in 50 years. And I'm sure that Nina McClellan can say a little bit more about that. But I don't think that those are the priorities that people thought they were voting for last November. It's really outrageous. It's hurting Cleveland, it's hurting Ohio, it's hurting the nation. And the sad part is it's entirely self-inflicted. This is a created crisis that does not need to happen. So on top of the huge cuts we've already made, more cuts are scheduled because of, as Harriet said, sequestration, which is the across-the-board budget cuts that aren't being done carefully, that aren't being done thoughtfully, that are just across-the-board automatic spending cuts that will take place over 9 years, $1.2 trillion sucked out of our domestic economy. And the first round of cuts is now scheduled, as you know, for March 1st. And the cuts are poorly planned, as I said, and they're across the board. And they're going to hit state and local budgets hard. So Obama and others have delivered the news on the national front. Slashing food safety workers are going to be reluctant to eat meat or eat out as a result of that. Slashing Head Start slots, slashing FAA personnel. You know, we're talking about longer waits at the airport. We're talking about low-income moms who aren't able to go to work because they can no longer bring their kids to Head Start. It's just really no way to run a country. And again, it's completely not necessary. We can stop it with action now. So last March, at Representative Mike Foley's request, the Legislative Service Commission of Ohio calculated what the federal funds cut from Ohio would mean. And they found that we'd be cutting more than $300 million out of our state budget in the current fiscal year. It would slash K-12 education. I know I've seen some retired teachers in the room. It would slash federal work-study funding that could support 2,000 college students. We have interns from our office here who are trying to pay for college right now. We've cut enough. We've cut enough. It's definitely not what Americans thought they were voting for, and it's austerity like this that hurts our communities. But again, ironically, it's actually going to make the deficit worse. So I think what Ohioans want is to educate our children, to train our workforce, to protect our communities, to provide a basic social safety net, to have people retire in dignity. We've done the cuts and we're suffering because of it. It's time to restore some balance. There are plenty of ways that we can raise revenue, and I'm happy to talk about more of them in the Q&A. But revenues have to be the major part of the next round of deficit reduction. And I think that smart choices now are going to mean less poverty, a stronger middle class, and a healthier economy in Ohio and all over the country. These are things that will actually reduce the deficit in the long run. So I think it's just time to stop this austerity agenda and get back to a prosperity agenda that made this country and this part of the country strong in the first place. Thanks so much.
Thank you. I'd now like to bring up have David Shagley from the Social Security Administration stand up and talk about the serious issues that he and his coworkers face.
Good afternoon. As Harriet said, I'm Dave Shagley, and I'm a Social Security worker. I work on the 800 number. How many of you have called the 800 number? At least once. I work the 800 number and answer calls every day. We've been under a great deal of budget pressure for the last 2 fiscal years. The result of that is a loss of 7,400 employees nationwide. That number represents about 12% of our workforce. Most of these employees are folks like myself, people that have retired through attrition, but they're not replaced. This leaves empty seats in the 800 number operations all over the country. It leaves empty seats in field offices. What do empty seats mean? It means longer waits to get through, to get the services that we offer. It means longer waits in waiting rooms, more crowded waiting rooms. I'm hearing stories from around the country of jostling. Fights have broken out in some waiting rooms because of crowded waiting rooms. Hours have already been cut at Social Security field offices. Instead of a 9 to 4:30 operation open to the public, we are now, as of 90 days ago, a 9 to 3 operation, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday to the public. Phones are off after 3 p.m. And on Wednesdays, we're a 9 to 12 operation. So budget austerity has already affected our ability to deliver public service. This also affects me as a worker. It means I'm dealing with a more stressed public. I'm having to spend time on the phone assuring folks up front that I'm going to do what I can to help you, even though you couldn't get through to your local field office perhaps, even though it took a long time to get through on the 800 number. I spend a good bit of many of my phone calls opening up with calming the public down. In effect, and this is a message that I took to the Hill last week, for both my Democrat friends in Congress and Republicans, is that this creates a safety issue because a higher frustrated public, we deal with mentally ill every day, we're there to help them. Sometimes we have to say no to them. Many times we have to say no to them. Many times they have to wait longer than they think they should. We talked to, last year we talked to 45 million people in field offices across the country. Higher frustration, going to be quite honest with you folks, leads to higher risk for our workers and the public in these field offices. We've seen what's happened around the country. And there have been incidents at Social Security offices with guards, even though guards are there. And it's a concern. It's a concern of people I work with every day. These austere budgets, and with the threat of sequestration, which would lead to another $650 million cuts, it means the field offices, in all likelihood, and Social Security would be closed 1 full day, a work week through the end of the fiscal year. This means all the workers are going to be stressed. They're not going to have the money to pay their bills for cars, buy the food that they're used to buying. So the public is going to be dealing with workers that are more stressed out, people like myself, as well as being stressed out themselves because they don't have access to us. Many calendars to make appointments, to see us, at these field offices are out to the max. There are no appointments. So when they do get through to us, what we're finding in the last 3 to 4 weeks, because of the pressure that's been brought to bear already without sequestration, folks, this is without sequestration, it's creating full calendars, lack of access for the public to the services that we provide. Thank you.
Now, we have James Merriweather from the VA. Now, the VA has its own budget, but even there, because of these cuts, there are ramifications. Everybody cares about veterans, at least we as a society talk a lot about how much we care about veterans, but when the proof is in the pudding. And so even the Veterans Administration, which is immune from sequestration, supposedly is suffering from these cuts, and James is going to talk a little bit about what's going on with the VA.
Yeah, right now we have a downgrade going on of employees throughout the medical center, especially in the administrative part and also certain branches of the medical department. The downgrade is, we don't know if it's in effect or not, or the sequester will put it into effect, but this is something that they had on the table for years, and now they're trying to implement this downgrade. A lot of employees at the VA Medical Center will be affected. I don't know how they're going to deal with it. Certain people's money will be cut in half, and so some of the services will be cut in half. Also, we have a problem with backlog. There's a large backlog of people coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan who cannot get their benefits due to the backlog of paying these individuals. And we don't really know how we're going to deal with it. People have been coming to the union asking us what's going on, what should we do, and we're not getting any answers because we don't know what to tell them. But there is a serious situation going on with the backlog, as you probably know and heard about. You have Iraqi veterans coming back with disabilities, and it's taken almost 2 years for some of them to get paid. Oh my God. And some of them coming back are becoming homeless. And we have patients right now walking around at the VA Medical Center. It's like they're begging, needing help, for food and other things like that. And our Social Security, our Social Service Department there is in an uproar. They don't know how to deal with it. And there's a lot of issues going on because these veterans have not only medical issues, psychiatric issues. And it's something that we're really trying to deal with. But the main issue here right now is the cutbacks that they're doing and downgrades. You have employees being downgraded, and they're not giving us a reason why. And with this sequester, I don't know if that will put it into effect or not. And a lot of people can't handle it. Thank you.
An excellent segue. We've heard about the issues of stress and what's the impact and the potential impact that stress, not only for the workers who deliver the services, but for the people who've been waiting a lot longer to get those services. They are stressed, the workers are stressed. It sounds like a volatile combination, and we have Bill Denahan here. I'm not going to give his title because he's here on his own time, but we all know Bill Denahan we know him, and he's an expert in mental health, and he's going to talk about an issue that is on all of our minds ever since the horrific shootings in Connecticut. Bill Denahan.
Thank you very much, Harriet. I'm really pleased to be here. I'm under stress, too. I'm under stress because there's a falsehood in America thinking when people get on Medicaid, everything is done. It doesn't take care of homelessness, doesn't take care of jobs, doesn't take care of crisis intervention, doesn't take care of detoxification, doesn't take care of our prevention programs, doesn't take care of our school programs. All these programs are under the funding we're about to lose. Period. Those programs are important to all of us. One of the things that we've learned, and it was touched on in terms of mental illness, you know what the largest mental hospital in the state of Ohio is?
Yeah, it's a prison.
You're all right, you said prison. There's a reason for that. And that reason is lack of services. And when services are lacking in terms of mental illness and addiction, these things happen. And the very programs that support Medicaid, we talked about the governor sponsoring Medicaid, and we appreciate that, and he's done a great job on that, and we hope the General Assembly supports that. But the funding we're talking about supports the wraparound services that goes with that, providing linkage in schools, for children who may have critical mental health issues. That's not covered by Medicaid. If you have a crisis and you go into a crisis center, it's not covered by Medicaid. We're talking about suicide and the prevention of suicide. That's not covered by Medicaid. All the services that we've been talking about in terms of residential. If a person doesn't have a home or a place to lay their head, unfortunately, that's one of the issues where they land in either homelessness, on the streets, or in prison, or the average age of a person with mental illness in America today is 54. Now that ought to be enough. We need all the services that surround and support Medicaid, not reducing them. So this discussion of reducing through sequestration, and I know I mispronounced that,
That's okay, we all
Close
do.
enough.
sequestration, stresses me out a lot. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We have a teacher here because we know education, which has already suffered greatly, is going to sustain even further cuts. And I'd now like to ask Bill Labezi to talk about some of those. Bill Labezi is from the NEOEA, and he's a teacher from Warrensville. Is that where you
Started in Warrensville, finished in Aurora.
finished in Aurora? Okay. Bill Labezi.
Well, it's a pleasure for me to be here today on behalf of NEOEA's 31,000 members to speak with you about the effects of a potential sequester on school children, developmentally disabled clients, and higher education students of Northeastern Ohio. Northeastern Ohio Education Association, NEOEA, is an affiliate of the National and Ohio Education Associations that includes the NEA and OEA members within an 11-county area of Northeastern Ohio, from the Pennsylvania line, somewhere I think out there, to Sandusky, and from the lake down to Youngstown. As an affiliate of the National Education Association, we rely on the NEA for certain analysis and services and to get us some resources. Their analysis indicates that unless Congress acts to stop the sequester, education funding will simply fall off a cliff, dropping to pre-2003 levels. Okay? America's elementary, secondary, and post-secondary schools have added 5.4 million students since 2003. So it's not as if the number of students that our members serve had declined during that period of time and the funding matched that. We've actually added significant numbers of students since then, and the costs associated with K-12 services have increased an estimated 25% since 2003. Meanwhile, we're seeing declining staff levels here in Ohio. The Ohio Education Association, with which we're affiliated, it's the largest education organization in the state, reports a 10% loss in membership over the past 5 years. The 10% loss of membership doesn't reflect loss of voluntary membership or dissatisfaction with the organization. It simply reflects the loss of education jobs in the state within the last 5 years. So it's overwhelmingly the result of layoffs of teachers and other educators. In the area that we serve, the area that I described before, that translates into about 3,000 fewer education jobs in our area. Overwhelmingly, talk to a teacher and they'll tell you that they have probably the highest class sizes in recent memory, and they'll tell you about the elimination of programs in the areas of the arts, industrial technology, foreign languages, things that we need, okay, and to make the kind of future that we want to. As a teacher, I want to mention that what that means, which most of you know, either as former students, some of you as teachers, some of you as parents of, and grandparents of students. What that means is less individual attention, a less rich educational environment, an educational environment that doesn't get into the kinds of things that we think of as being things that schools can explore. It's a more narrowly confined educational boundary, okay, for what can be taught. An organization called the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities. It's a nonpartisan organization which did a report summarizing what they call the impact of sequestration on federal education programs, quite a title, and they broke it down by state. They identify Ohio's potential funding loss from the sequester is $91 million in the area of education. That's from pre-K through post-secondary education, affecting an estimated 174,205 learners. I don't know how they got it that precise. And something like 1,455 jobs. So statewide, we're talking about, within my organization alone, about 10% of OEA's population. That's about 13,000 in the last 5 years. Add to that another 1,500 or thereabouts from the sequester, so it just makes it deeper. And that's not even talking about losses in other education groups, like the AFT, like the independents, like Akron, for example, which is an independent school union. That same organization, same study estimates that 62,000 of the K-12 students will be affected by the loss of Title I funding and special education grants alone. These are more vulnerable students, so this would have an impact, as these cuts often do, on those who are the most vulnerable. Nearly 83,000 post-secondary students would be impacted by the loss of supplemental educational opportunity grants and work-study grants, which again go to less well-off post-secondary students. This doesn't come at a time when when America's schools and Ohio schools are well-funded and comfortable and sitting pretty. Since July 2008, the USA has lost an estimated 312,700 public education jobs. This means there are roughly as many local school jobs today as in December 2004. And yet there will be 847,000 more pre-K public school students this coming year than in the fall of 2004. So more students, fewer people to work with them, okay? The irony here, I heard Amy talk about the irony of some of these proposals. One of the irony, I think those of us in education feel, is that everybody talks about how education is the key to a more prosperous future for us all, okay? And I think Americans in general really believe that education is the key to a more prosperous future. And yet what we're talking about doing, what we have been doing systematically for the last 10 years, is stretching the resources, stretching the resources, stretching the resources, pack them tight, crowd them in, okay? Teach as many as you can for the least amount of money as you possibly can, okay? And the result is a poorer education, okay, for those students coming through. NEA has adopted a slogan that some cuts don't heal, okay, which is kind of a cute little slogan, but it's also true. It's true because, especially because in today's educational environment, school years are more crowded than they used to be. We have high-stakes testing in virtually every grade of virtually every school now. The typical school year has about 1 week devoted just to the testing itself. No time's been added to the school year. That's a week of instruction lost to testing. Countless more weeks are lost to the preparation for that testing. If you could go into a school today and sit with the kids, you would see that there's a far greater tendency to hurry things along, make sure you cover what you can cover as fast as you can cover it, because there's no time to do the kinds of things many of us remember from school. Okay, some of the things that made school a little more memorable, a little more fun. It's a less fun place today than it used to be. So what I'm saying is that there was a time when if you had some problems with funding that lost you some resources for a year, for a month, for a few months, you probably could do some making up. It's very hard to make up those losses today because the school year is crammed so tightly, okay? You don't have an extra day or so that you can give to making up for what maybe wasn't done back when there was a budget problem or something like that. So it's a tougher environment, tougher to be in, tougher to recover from, okay? It's already tougher. The sequester doesn't help. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to just note, especially for Tom Barris back there, we have in our midst today a teacher, Merle Johnson, who actually really was almost forced to retire because she had so many classes of over 45 children in each class. And maybe Merle might want to say something about that. You want to say a little bit about that?
Yeah, I wasn't forced to retire. It makes
Well,
it sound like
forced
it
in
made
quotes.
me retire.
In quotes.
I chose to retire because I was no longer able to be the kind of teacher that I was used to being. 52 students in the 9th grade English class, 45 and 47 in my other 2 classes. Couldn't remember the names, couldn't develop the relationships, and relationships are the #1 important component of effective teaching. And as a result of that, the stress level was so high, the joy was gone. And I had been teaching for 40 years, I've always loved it, and I had always said that if there ever came a time when the joy left, then I would have to retire, because I was not being effective. My patience was short, you know, and you have, I said the hardest thing in the world is trying to get 52 9th graders to be quiet at one time. It's impossible. It's impossible. And so rather than be ineffective, to be stressed, I retired. But I'm still working, I'm going back, I'm still working with the students in another capacity, in tutoring and so forth. But it's just something that I really did not want to do. It broke my heart to have to do it, but I had to make that choice.
Thank you. We're all concerned about jobs. In all polls, it seems to be the #1 thing that Americans are concerned about. Way more so than cutting taxes. More people by far are concerned about jobs. And everybody wants to create more jobs. We know we have to create more jobs if our economy is going to rebound. Where will these jobs come from? One answer to that question is from updating our infrastructure and at the same time trying to reduce our dependence on foreign oil and boost a new energy economy. So here we have Chanel Smith of Emerald Cities to talk about what has already been started in this very, very important arena, which everybody is concerned about, where it can go, but also how damaging it would be if these important new initiatives were stopped dead in their tracks. So we'd like to have Chanel talk about some of the new directions we need to go to get a good economy back.
So I think I'm loud enough to stay seated. Actually, I spend my 9-to-5 job as a green jobs advocate, and I sort of stumbled upon this career, but this no cuts issue is very personal to me. I have 2 parents who have spent over 3 decades as UAW workers in the Toledo area. And my mom actually works at the General Motors powertrain facility in Toledo. And so when the auto industry was waiting to see what would happen, and when the auto rescue came, we were extremely excited and grateful that General Motors would be ushering in a new era in the new green energy economy. And so my mom became a green jobs worker, which to her surprise she didn't know until I told her, like, Mom, you're building the engine for the Chevy Cruze. You're in the green economy. And green jobs and good green jobs and good green job training at a scale can answer the dual promise of environmental health and community prosperity. But we are not starting from scratch. Through my mom's experience and others, we have learned that most efficient and effective way to prepare a green collar worker or workforce is to build upon the existing foundation of state and local workforce development programs. Right now in Cleveland, the Building Trades Council and Cuyahoga County Community College and others are preparing local residents for the green energy economy. Clevelanders are learning to install LED lighting. They're learning to build and install energy efficient HVAC systems. They're gaining an array of skills to save building owners energy costs and to reduce our carbon footprint. Clevelanders are even manufacturing wind turbine parts and preparing to construct wind turbines in Lake Erie and to build wind farms across the country and even in other places in the world. So we are gaining new skills, and we can compete in the global economy if our workforce development training programs are not cut. You know, while we're busy building new green skills into our current training programs, Congress is threatening to cut workforce development through sequestration. Ohio's
She said it right.
sequestration.
There
Ohio is already behind in workforce development before they even make these cuts, including, with these cuts, we can see up to 20% cut in workforce development training programs, while we have veterans and returning citizens who need these training dollars and this training wraparound services to enter the new economy or even to work in economies that we already have in place. Ohio's job training programs will lose $15 million in 2013. That means we'll serve 43,000 less people. If these cuts remain in place until 2021, Ohio will lose nearly $200 million in funding for workforce development, and 500,000 people will be left without a career pipeline and lack the critical and training services that they need. The irony of all this is that, the so-called job creators, the employers, are the ones that say that they can't find workers. And we know Congress usually listens to them, but they still want to cut workforce training. The real job creators, us, we really can't afford these cuts, and we won't stand for them. At least I know I won't, and we in this room, we won't either.
That's right.
Our economic future, our pocketbooks, depends on the skills of our workforce. Congress must invest in green skills and other skills to maintain our state's competitiveness in the global market. Cutting workforce investments will slow down preparing our workforce for the new green economy and the transformation of current industries and jobs we already have. We cannot allow the myth of austerity to threaten our economy and threaten our vital workforce development programs. And Emerald Cities and others in our coalition, including the Building Trades, AFL-CIO, Policy Matters, and a few other organizations, we urge Congress to adopt a balanced approach to deficit reduction that does not include further cuts to our needed workforce development training programs in Ohio.
Thank you. The Postal Service, the director of the Postal Service has announced that post offices are going to be closed on, mail delivery is going to be stopped on Saturday. Now, a lot of people say, oh, so what? One less day of delivery, big deal. It happens to be a really, really huge deal. And we have April Stoltz here. This is not about the sequestration, but because the post office is self-funded. But April is going to talk about the trickery and the horrific effects that closing mail delivery, stopping mail delivery on Saturday will have on all of us, every American.
So, if the postmaster gets his way and we end Saturday delivery in August, we are talking about losing thousands and thousands of decent middle-class wage jobs with benefits, the kinds of jobs we've all been hearing that we want to actually develop and create. And that's really important because those middle-class wages go shopping. Those middle-class wages pay mortgages. Those middle-class wages pay property taxes and pay into all of our schools and all the other things that we all pool our money into and benefit from. Now, the argument for ending Saturday delivery is that the post office is broke and we need to do something to stem the flow. So, if you walk away today with anything, know this: we are not broke. It is a fake financial crisis. Now, why do I say that? Because in 2006, a bill was passed that forces the post office to pay 75 years forward, future retiree health care. And we got to do it in 10 years. So let me run that by you again. That's like forcing you to pay a 75-year mortgage off in 10 years. So nobody does that in the private sector. Nobody does that in the public sector. And that means we are paying $5.5 billion every year into this fund. Brothers and sisters, we aren't broke. The post office and postal delivery, it is the people's delivery service. It belongs to us. It is mandated universal delivery, same amount of money, everybody gets their mail. And you know, it's not just about jobs for us in the post office, because just know this, because we have 6-day delivery, there's a whole position created for letter carriers who deliver the same 5 routes while that regular carrier's on their day off, right? That whole position would be eliminated. Thousands of jobs, I'm telling you, good paying jobs that pay the budgets that in the communities we live in, gone. And it's unnecessary. And it's unnecessary. And also know this, back to this being our delivery service, the people's delivery service. There are currently bills in Congress where they want to end door-to-door delivery. You know, where does it stop, brothers and sisters? They want you to go to the end of your street to get your mail out of a big, huge metal block. So you get home at 10:30, you're going to walk down the street to get your mail. Now, there's 100 scenarios we can think of why that is crazy. And, again, unnecessary. We're not broke. With the elimination of a lot of excellent jobs, good benefits that we all benefit from. This is not us against them. This is the we. We're all in it together, brothers and sisters. And we need to keep 6-day delivery. There was a bill that just got introduced by Brother Bernie Sanders that talks about rectifying the situation at the post office that would eliminate this mandating 75-year mortgage off in 10 years, again, that nobody does. Keep the people's delivery service, it's yours. Don't let them sell it off to the highest bidder, because that's where this is going. And we need these good union jobs. Thank you. Appreciate
So this is just another example. It's very, I think it really fits into this because the sequestration cuts are unnecessary. This malarkey with the post office is unnecessary. These crises are being manufactured to cut taxes and cut back services. And it's unnecessary, unwarranted, and it hurts all of us. So Nina McClellan from Cleveland Peace Action is here. And she's going to talk about some of the military spending cuts that would really help the situation, again, by raising revenue. So Nina.
Thank you. As Harriet said, a lot of this is unnecessary. And one important piece of this that we need to think about is slimming down Pentagon spending as a very important piece, and about which there has been a lot of misinformation in the media and coming out of Washington. Congress should close additional tax loopholes and special benefits. But as we all know, the focus now is on cutting, cutting, cutting. Now, while Congress may let sequestration happen, and that's what we've been hearing a lot, and we would like to stop it, eventually, one way or another, they're going to have to reach a compromise. But without raising revenue significantly, they have only 2 choices. One is to cut programs vital to the 99% of us, or to cut runaway Pentagon spending. Over half of cuts, at least, should come from the Pentagon budget. People programs, by the way, have already been cut 3-to-1 over revenue increases. And that's very important to keep in mind. And the January revenue was very modest. So while the Pentagon devours over half of our discretionary funding, it's about 57% of discretionary funding now goes to the Pentagon, without counting war spending, by the way. That is the highest budget in real dollars since World War II. It almost doubled in the past 10 years. And without including the Afghan-Iraq war costs, the Pentagon budget since 2000 grew 3 times the rate of domestic programs. We can't protect essential programs without shutting down the Pentagon's apparently insatiable budget appetite. But across the board cuts, this sequestration is not the way to do it. We need sensible, strategic reductions that, as much as possible, protect veterans, active duty personnel, and civilian jobs. These are the reductions supported by most Americans and by experts across the political spectrum. Let's start with Pentagon waste and fraud. In 1 year, the Pentagon lost, wasted, and misspent more than the total budgets of 5 federal departments. It is the only department which has never been audited and can't pass an audit. In addition, using our tax dollars, the richest defense contractors lobby Congress to protect their billion-dollar contracts, special tax loopholes, and excessive compensation. The top 5 CEO defense contractor salaries averaged $21 million in 2011, higher than almost any Wall Street executives. In addition, we must also cut back costly overseas bases. We have going on 1,000. Private mercenaries who are way more expensive doing the same jobs that the military used to do for themselves. And outdated weapons programs. We've got weapons programs that even the Pentagon doesn't want, but they get lobbied for them. So there's plenty more. Did you know, for example, that the Pentagon spends over $500 million a year just on bands and other military music? Finally, contrary to statements by military contractors, the job loss and economic impact is far greater from domestic cuts compared to cuts in the military, and I can talk more about that in the question period if anybody is interested. So I welcome questions, and thank you very much.
Well, that concludes our formal presentation here today. I think if there are questions, we can have those now, any questions from the media. Again, we're talking, I thought it was 600,000 jobs that would be affected by the sequestration. On NPR driving in today, I heard it was 700,000 jobs. So again, that's the immediate, I mean, if you're one of those 700,000 people, you stand to lose your job March 1st. But as we have talked about, every American is going to be affected by this. If you're not affected directly because you're a client of one of the services, and who isn't, quite frankly, almost all of us are, the overall economy, when 700,000 people lose their jobs, we know that's 700,000 people who are not buying groceries, buying cars, paying their mortgage, they're losing their homes. It's a disaster. So this is absurd, and we are here because we want to put a stop to this. We in no way do we think this is a way to run a country, as all of our speakers have pointed out. So that concludes the formal portion of this, but if there are questions, answers, comments of any of the speakers, or if the media has any questions, we could take them now. I wanted to ask Nina one question about the job creation in the military versus the non-military economy, the job ratios. I know you have that figure somewhere.
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Can everybody see that bar chart up there? This was a study done at the University of Massachusetts, and they look at the job creation potential of $1 billion in spending. In education, just the military spending is the worst way if you're looking at jobs to spend the money. It's very capital intensive. A lot of it goes overseas. So in the military, for that $1 billion, and this goes to job creation or job loss, it affects a little over 11,000 jobs. In education, it affects almost 27,000 jobs. In healthcare, over 17,000 and on. So that cutting in the military, if they are strategic cuts, if they are sensible cuts, we can do it with far less impact on the economy than if it's in the domestic sector.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
You know, Harry, I just wanted to mention that we talk about irony. This country continues to cut education, and we have the largest prison population in the world. And 80% of inmates are high school dropouts. And so you look at this country's priorities and how they continue to cut education. You know, we're 5% of the world's population. We have 25% of the world's inmates. And it's really incredible the direction that this country continues to move. It's very, very sad. Very sad.
Greg?
A question for any of the panelists. We have seen the impact of budget cuts and austerity measures in Europe. Greece, Spain, Portugal, elsewhere, that's resulted in disastrous economic conditions. What do any of the panelists think it would be any different here?
Panelists?
Well, I don't think it would be. I mean, we have about 58,000 employees at Social Security. The union that I'm part of represents about 600,000 employees. Now, the shadow workforce, as I call it, the contractors, are many, many more than that. And contractors spend money in the community as well. The problem with contracted jobs is that they're benefit poor, wage poor, and a lot of that money stays at the top. As you were talking about the defense contractors, you know, many of the contractors make lots of money. Austerity, cutting services, needed services, affect local economies deeply. You know, there's a lot of arguments about whether a sports complex affects an economy positively or not, but I'm here to tell you that when you cut back on local, state, and federal jobs or their incomes, and we've been on a pay freeze for over 2 years, we've contributed as federal employees $122 billion to the deficit. That was, most of that was done before there was ever any kind of tax increase on the wealthiest people in this country, and it's not right.
That's right.
Austerity will lead to more austerity, except for the wealthiest, because they already have the resources, the capital, to increase their margins even more. We don't. We've chosen as a vocation to public service, but you're losing good people in education, employees at Social Security, people that are there to help people, to provide assistance. This is not right. This is a different kind of decapitalization that hurts everyone. It's terrible. We need to be encouraging our best minds to go into fields like engineering, not finance, not moving financial paper, which is what our society unfortunately has become largely about. We need to be about people. Austerity will not lead us down that path.
Thank you. Any other panelists want to come answer the question?
Let's get a few more questions.
Okay, Damien.
Yeah, this esteemed panel has done a wonderful job outlining the impact that it will have to the service sector, to jobs, to the programs that help build the skills for jobs. And then this soul right here did a wonderful job of talking about the prison situation. And we all know that Cuyahoga County is the biggest recipient of returned citizens in all of Ohio. And so now that we've done a wonderful job creating awareness around this, what are the next steps? This coalition has been definitely a wonderful first step in galvanizing and creating awareness and education around it. Now what are the next steps? How do we create a movement around this? I pose this to anybody. How do we create a movement around this now that we're doing the education to get people engaged and involved and to take a step and say, you know what, we're going to unite around this. We're not going to let this happen.
Well, I'd like to comment on that. There is a growing national movement and coalition that I think is very important. I'm from the peace sector. Peace Action is a national organization, the largest peace grassroots peace group in the country. For the first time, nationally and now locally, peace, justice, human services, health and human services, labor are joining together to speak out and understanding their common interest in this. And I think it's a very important new development that is happening and that we need to build on. For example, there is a letter signed by over 100 national organizations, including the Methodists, the National Methodist Church, unions, and many other groups, health and human service groups, that to Congress to protest sequestration and the cuts and to call for more revenue and for cutting military. And that letter now can be signed at a local level. So I think we need to get that out and keep these coalitions going at all levels. And I think it's a breakthrough. This hasn't happened before. I think people are realizing that we have to come together.
No.
So this isn't a one-time thing, right? So we dealt with cuts with Kasich during the last budget fight. We'll probably deal with cuts again, and I'm pretty sure Amy can speak more about the budget situation that we're going to run into. But I think we, as local Clevelanders, I think we need to, as moving ahead, I think we need to develop a dialogue where we talk about our city budget, our state budget, and what's happening through these budget cuts and how they affect workforce training and development and services, for returning citizens, for veterans, for public sector workers, and really, have an honest conversation about creating career pathways with services and move people into, a family sustaining wage. And so I don't want us to, just worry about sequestration, because it's much more about, it's about much more than that.
It's about what kind of society do we want.
Yeah.
Can you say that louder?
It's about what kind of society do we want? What kind of communities do we want? What do we value? That's what it's about.
Yeah.
It's about having our policies match what we say our values are.
Right.
If our policies don't match what we say our values are, nothing is going to change. It's only going to get worse. So we've got to work together. We've got to have that movement to influence the people that represent us and make sure that they understand where our values are and have those policies match them.
Well said.
We also have to use the social media, and I think, I'm still 20th century when it comes to a lot of that, but I think that this coalition, if you don't have it yet, that we should have a Facebook page, and that can be one way that we can build this coalition, is to have a Facebook page and to have people actually become a part of the coalition. That Facebook page could include talking points, could include the wonderful, wonderful comments that were made today. The most important thing about any kind of activism is being educated about the issue. And we can use that Facebook page to make sure that people have the facts they need to be powerful souls. And I think that's very, very important. So I'm hoping that, I don't know how to do it, but I hope somebody will. I hope somebody will do that.
Well, I also think we need to get out in the streets.
Yes.
And I would remind us that last year we had quite a good coalition around Save Our Communities, and we were marching on Tax Day last year. I think we should do that again this year and have another Save Our Communities big demonstration, and we're all fired up.
Okay. And use the Facebook page to get marchers. You got that, Merle. That's how you get marchers.
And make sure it's not cold. So, and on that note, just as a segue, there is planned by my union, the National Association of Letter Carriers, a Save Postal Jobs, Save the Post Office, Save 6-Day Delivery demonstration on March 24th. More to be supplied in terms of that information. It's an opportunity coming up for all of us to support each other in this broad struggle of building good values and building good community and being together on the street. And phone calls and letters really do make a difference too. Because I know from brothers and sisters that are in that State House, they often come in and say, man, I got a load of calls or I got a load of letters. So it's many things to do, and we can do it.
April, you said March 24th, there's a,
March 24th.
We'll be
and
sending out
to be announced more details, but it's a
Okay.
national, this is national. This is going to be a national day of education demonstration on saving 6-day delivery.
David.
Just gonna say, and to that end, let's all write a letter, send a letter to a friend or relative that we've contacted by email in the last several years. Send a letter.
A real letter or?
Yes.
A
real letter with hard copy.
That's a stamp, that's a stamp,
If
that's
you,
right.
like at Social Security, our service delivery, the integrity of our service delivery, the timeliness of it has been our strength, community-based service delivery. And that love is threatened by budget cuts, and there are some people that know that. It's intentional. With the Postal Service, I think the love of the post office, it's not about getting that piece of mail from somebody else, it's about getting that note from my mother, and who I love for still sending that. And so, I think that we can revive our love for the post office in part by everybody sitting down and writing a letter. Let's have a national write a letter a day to a loved one, a friend, a colleague.
and I love the stamps.
Well,
Lots of love.
speaking of love, I think that's one of the important things that we want to express today is the people who do these jobs, working for Social Security, the VA, the post office, they are proud of these jobs. They love these jobs. They are committed to these jobs. And they feel and are correct in feeling that they're performing a very important service that people appreciate and people want. And that human element is so absent. And in fact, I know David, he didn't mention it today, but he has often said, the first thing we're supposed to tell people is, go online. Don't talk to me, who's trained to help you and who is a human being who can discuss with you your options for the future. Just go online. They are actually told to tell clients to go online. They're told to dehumanize people in the most human of processes, trying to figure out your retirement.
And I'm telling you, those phone calls, talking to the public, when they tell you, thank you for your help, thank you for being a human being, or you get the blessing at the end of the phone call. I've been doing it for 22 years, and it can still bring a tear to my eye.
Yeah, I think the whole argument on austerity is we've been steered to who should be cut and who shouldn't be cut. I know that's what the meeting's about, but that's not the solution to this depression. The solution is you put the unemployed to work. You also put the unemployed where they can spend money on their kids' education and everything else. The solution is jobs, not should this guy stay, should this guy go. That will never get us out of this. People making money and paying taxes from good paying jobs is the labor view of how we get out of this problem.
That's right.
Yeah, I think you make a great point. I mean, it's ironic that we're sitting here talking about which jobs we're going to cut, but what we should really be talking about is how to put all of the people whose talents and time and energy and capacity are being wasted by our high levels of unemployment. This is not, in the past, when America faced this level of sustained unemployment, we put people back to work with programs that we still see the benefits of today. When we go hiking in Southeast Ohio, and we see these beautiful bridges that were built through the WPA, when we go to a local theater that was built through the WPA, there are so many ways that we could be enriching our communities, employing people, building their talents, and making all of our lives better, instead of discussing whether we want to cut your job and cut your job and cut your job. We should be discussing how to retain the people who are currently contributing to our economy and find ways of bringing in the people who've been left out, who have a lot to give.